Hi, everybody. The music today is a little bit different than usual, although I guess we don't have a usual. Can you hear it all right? I'm glad to hear it, Dan. We'll just give it another minute or so as people filter in. Alice, do you want to share about this music?
I was just typing by Erhu. This music's name is Saima, which basically means race horse or horse racing. Ma is horse. And I think a lot of people know this is the new year, new lunar year of the fire horse. And Saima was created, I think, in 1960s. And yeah, it was a play on this traditional Chinese instrument, which is called erhu. It only has two strings. Then that was a performance from 2000, from the last year of the horse in China's CCTV show in 2014.
Thank you. Yeah, I added the link to the chat in case people want to listen to it again later. Thought it would be a nice start to today's convening to acknowledge the new year and the symbology of the fire horse and what it could mean, hopefully, for Hui Māla as it is a year of, of moving forward and hopefully swiftly with our new we are working, of course, still with the National Park Service, Rivers Trails and Conservation Association. They are helping us with our strategic planning, and there's definitely forward momentum there. All right. Well, I will briefly do an opening, talk about the agenda, and then I'll hand it over. Um, and since we are, let's see, about 12 people, I think we can go around the room and do introductions. So we'll do that in a second. But before we do, I just wanted to share that the agenda today will get started in about 10 to 15 minutes with updates from Kamalani and from Anna on uh, the update on legislative session, specifically on bills relating to the mission of our Hui. So bills related to gardening or food production at a community scale, and could be, well, we'll see. We'll see what there is. I'm excited to learn about this myself because I haven't been able to follow along closely. So we appreciate having them here to give us that update, and to keep an eye on these things that, there's a lot in there and it requires people power and hours to track it and stay informed. So we appreciate having them. And let's go around the room. I'll stop sharing the screen, but I'd love for you all to share, to introduce yourself if it feels relevant to share your organization and your pronouns. And then I'm copying this prompt from something that Ati brought to us in a leadership team meeting because it's just so good. And it's what's one smell that instantly brings you to a place in your memory? And what is that memory? Um, I can briefly start. So for those who don't know me, my name is Anna Mines, but I think I know everyone here. Maybe there's some new people. My name is Anna Mines. I work with the City and County of Honolulu's Community Gardening Program. I'm the project manager here, and I also volunteer and facilitate Hui Māla. And a smell that instantly brings me to a place is actually must and mold. So it does two things. One, it brings me back to a cabin that my grandparents had in Whidbey Island, in near Seattle, and it's that's a wonderful memory because it was a wonderful place. But it also turns out that I have a sensitivity, and of course, mold can be harmful to anybody. Um, and I was living in a moldy house here for 3 years on Oahu, and it really affected my well-being, and it was a really challenging time. So I'm actually going to talk more about it along with panelists, with who are experts in mold in one way or another, mycologists, remediation specialists, and I think a immunologist at the Climate Change and Public Health Working Group. So I'll plug that if you are interested in this working group, it's open to anybody who'd like to attend, and it's on Friday. Their next convening is on Friday. So I'll share some information about that if you're interested in learning more about mold. And I'll pass it, let's do a passing game, and I'll pass it over to Emma Waters.
Hi, I'm Emma Waters. I work for the Hawaii Public Health Institute. I'm the Healthy Eating and Active Living Coalition Coordinator over here on Hawaii County. And I think for me, one of the ones that's really strong is like the smell of the ocean. And it often reminds me of my favorite beach here where I grew up, which is Wailea Bay over on the west side, also known as Beach 69. So yeah, fond memories. And I'll pass it to Ati.
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks for the nice compliment, Anna. Yeah, it is a neat one. I my smell would be fresh raked leaves. I lived on Round Top up on Oahu in the mountains. All the homes there had driveways. I was tasked with raking our driveway. And so wet bamboo leaves mostly was what I was raking, but some of the memories um is the solitude that I had while I was doing that, but always being visited by a bird here that I most folks know it as the Shama thrush. It's a blackback bird, white breast or orange breast, and it mimics calls. It's beautiful, but it would come down when I'm raking and go through the piles and look for all the critters that I stirred up underneath the pile. So yeah, wet bamboo leaves. I will pass it on to Alice.
Thank you, Adi. I think my answers was same. The smell bring me great memory was the German five-star hotel I worked at in Beijing. Every lobby they use scent branding, so a lot of five-star hotels they do that. So every lobby they use the same smell, the same diffuser. I had great mentors and colleagues. So whenever I walk into a new Kempinski, wherever it is, it always brings back great memory. And I will bring it to Anna Easy.
Thanks, Alice. Ooh, I love the scent branding. Um, yeah, I think for me, gosh, a lot of sense, but maybe horses, like the smell of horses, just I still feel like the excitement that I felt as a child, like getting ready to, you know, go for a ride. And yeah, it's just a really powerful smell. Um, I will pass it to who hasn't gone. Maybe Leia.
Oh, wow. Yes, aloha, Leah Kamani Yaya. I think mine is kind of like basic, but it's okay. Mine is the rain because I lived in Waianae here on the island of Oahu, and if you know, we get like 1 hour of rain a year, 20 to 21 inches a year. So when I was 3 years old, it was the first time that my mom actually let me play in the rain, and this is my first experience of having rain. So the rain definitely brings really great memories and makes me want to run outside and be a kid again. I'll pass it on over to Grace. Oh, wait, is Grace the one that added in the chat? Oh, you covered mine. I'll pass it over to Jason.
Hello, Jason with the City and County of Honolulu's Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. Um, I'm a food systems planner for the city. Um, I was just smelling my toddler's hair this morning, so I'll say that it smelled great. Usually, well, when they're not pooing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I will pass it to Dave.
Thanks, Jason. Oh boy, I'm struggling. A lot of scents going through my mind. Um, the one that keeps coming back is the smell of forests in the northeastern US. There's something distinct about that. The mix of conifers and deciduous trees, very rocky landscapes. Even when I just see photos of areas like that, I feel like I can smell it. So I'll leave it at that. Forest. Mm. And boy, oh boy, does anybody know if there's anyone left?
I put the list in the chat, but why
Oh,
don't we?
thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll go to Dan.
Thank you, Dan Donnell with Trees for Honolulu's Future. So many smells, but I'm going to go with fresh baked bread. We used to do that when we lived in LA a lot, and I don't know, somewhere along the way we've lost it. But it was just nice to wake up and have fresh smelling bread in the house. So maybe this has inspired me to bake some bread, and I will toss it to Anya.
Hello, I'm Anya Neville. I participate in a community garden in Mililani. Pronouns she, her. The smell I'm thinking is anything on the farm. The cows, the pigs, the manure, the soil getting tilled up, chickens. Um, Reminds me of my grandparents' farm, growing up and just having fun there with running around with my cousins, going fishing, stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'll pass it to has Jade gone yet?
Hi, I'm Jade. I'm a student from UH West Oahu in Sustainable Community Food Systems, and I'm glad to just crash your guys' meeting. One smell I'm thinking like it's either star fruit, like from a tree from my auntie's house. It's that specific smell of them like low-key falling and like fermenting on the ground, or it's gardenia or pikake. But yeah, I think Alan.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Alan. I'm with Alan Cardenas, he, him pronouns. I am with the River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program with the National Park Service. And I had a different answer last time I was asked this, but I'm gonna pick a new one. So it's like a chorizo with potato. It's a thing my mom would make growing up, and I haven't really. She would make it for breakfast a lot, and as I've gotten to be an adult, I've never gotten into cooking breakfast, so I do miss like those breakfast smells. And then let me go to the list. Wayne or Karen, whoever is ready.
How about?
I can
Oh,
go.
great.
Is that Wayne Suzuki? Sorry, I'm driving, so hopefully you can hear me. Um, uh, I gotta go with the bread. We used to have a wholesome bakery on Middle Street and by the freeway, and everybody would all get excited as we pass by. Uh, that wakes anybody up to me. And also we use that little theme in our when I was a part-time realtor, we used to bake stuff for people in the, that come early in the afternoon, gets them motivated. So yeah, that's a powerful smell. Baked bread or anything baked in the oven.
It is a powerful smell.
Oh, I
Um,
also want to add too, Mina, since I lost my smell in over a year, and now it's even bad, we have to have a surgery. I gotta tell you, That's one cent I miss. So any cent is good, right? Appreciate it.
Thanks, Wayne. And I think if Meredith, is Karen still on? It's possible that who's left. So we'll have Meredith go.
All right. Mahalo. Hi, everyone. Meredith Spiker, and I'm with National Park Service, Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. And I'm sorry I came a little late, but I think it's about a smell. And, one smell that came to mind for me that I'm missing is someone in my office who now I'm like by myself in my office, so it's not as exciting. But one of my coworkers, Jamie, had pikake and jasmine, and she would always bring in flowers, like when her flowers were blooming, and she would just bring them in, and she would just nicely leave them like on your chair or like right on top of your computer. So when you got to work, it was just like you had this like beautiful smell, but it reminds me of her. So there you go.
Lovely. See, this is why this prompt is so cool. It's just instantly, I think, a way to share about ourselves through a scent. Okay, well, let's move on to the presentation. I'll share my screen again. And then, yeah, Kamalani and Anna, just tell me when you want me to change slides.
Yeah, mahalo. Okay, so aloha everyone. I'm Leah Kamalani Yaya. I'm kind of known as both Leah and Kamalani, but I prefer Kamalani, but whichever one. I'm a student at Sustainable Community Food Systems at UH West. I also have some a little bit of policy background in food policy advocacy with Hawaii Food Plus Policy and Purple Maya Foundation. And then this year, I'm also helping Anna Izzy, who's collaborating with me today, um, tracking some bills on her end, as well as sitting on Hunter's legislative committee with Hawaii's Farmers Union United. That's a little bit about me. So thank you for allowing us to come in. I don't see Anna's screen on here. Okay. And then today we're just going to be providing a presentation on the 2026 Hawaii State Legislative Session and its relevant bills to Hui Māla. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing. Just going to lay some groundwork for the biennial year as well as a legislative calendar. We're going to be discussing some relevant bills of 2025 and 2026, its importance to Hui Māla, provide some policy trackers and some relevant resources at the end. And then if there's time, maybe just if you guys have any questions or need clarification or open discussion, we can do that too. Next slide, please. So just quickly stating here, it's just like 2026 is a biennial year. So 2025 was the start of this biennial year, which is a 2-year cycle in Hawaii State Legislature, and then 2026 is the ending of it. And so any bills introduced in 2025, if they're not deferred, they're technically still alive and can be transferred to the 2026 year. And then when they are carried over and transferred in that way, the bill does technically have this ability to be picked up where it left off at the point at where it left off last year. And so if the bill doesn't get passed or heard by the end of this year, then it needs to be completely reintroduced in 2027. So it's a little bit of background of where we are in terms of the legislative session because of our current year. Okay, next slide. We wanted to kind of provide you folks with this link to the legislative calendar because it's going to be kind of important throughout this legislative session as well as throughout this presentation, just to kind of understand where a bill is moving throughout the legislative process and what kind of resources are out there in terms of helping with understanding this. So linked on this slide is screenshots as well as a link to the 2026 legislative calendar, also known as a session calendar. And in case you didn't know, opening day occurs every year, and this year was on the third January 21st. And the legislative session is 60 legislative days long, and that excludes weekends, holidays, and mandatory recess days. So as of today, we are on the 20th day of the legislative session. And when you look at the calendar, you can actually see on the bottom right-hand side of every key date or calendar date of what day we are on that session. What's also helpful about this legislative calendar is that at the bottom, there's like this guide to kind of explain what deadlines mean and how they impact a bill. And they also have the contact information for public access room, and they're the main ones that kind of help assist the public in this legislative process and just kind of understanding how things move. Okay, next slide, please. And then just lastly, like another thing that we felt was really important for you folks to know is to kind of keep these main dates on your radar for the decking and these crossover deadlines that are coming up. And then because we are about 1/3 of our way into the legislative session, we also wanted to provide for you folks this terminology of originating chamber and non-originating chamber, which is going to be pretty relevant once we get closer to the crossover and even into the crossover. Yes, next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to be discussing the relevant bills of 2025 and that are going to be relevant to Hui Māla. And like I mentioned earlier, these bills didn't technically defer, or if they didn't defer last year, then they're technically alive. And there's this screenshot here at the bottom of the slide that says like carried over to a 2026 regular session. And that's the terminology that the legislative website is using currently to kind of indicate that this bill is still alive. Also want to remind that bills that are still alive this year from 2025 do have this opportunity again to be picked up where they left off at the point at which they left off at. But we'll see what happens this year and how the 2026 legislature is going to play that rollout because I haven't seen it happen yet. So yeah, next. Beginning first with this right to garden, and I think we all might kind of benefit if we just had a little like talk session about this if you folks have any mana'o. Because with this bill, House Bill 1468 in 2025, it was introduced. It's called a right to garden. And this bill last year, it stopped at the introduction deadline, which was January 27 of 2025. And it hasn't been heard by any of the House committees of Commerce and of Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs from the House. And so in order for this bill to be still alive this year, it does have to pass the first decking deadline, which is on 3/6 of 2026. So all of the committees have to hold a vote and then pass it through their chamber. But what was really interesting about this bill was that it was based off of the Lahaina wildfire interim report, which was relating to disaster preparedness and food security and how growing food and cultivating food in homeowners association can be a key role in alleviating the stressors that come from when those instances occur. And so the purpose was to authorize these homeowner associations and apartment owner associations to cultivate gardening practices, as resident gardening is currently prohibited by the owner of the area. So if we go to the next slide to make it a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more clear, this bill is essentially adding new statutory requirements to a Hawaii revised statute that is already occurring. But what Anna, Izzy, and I were kind of discussing with it is that there's this rule that within the Hawaii state, within the revised statutes, how we're interpreting it is that there's this rule that yes, we can plant, we have this opportunity to, but if the owners of the association doesn't allow us, then now we can't. So maybe we might have a little bit more mana'o from you folks in terms of how those powers kind of play. So this is one of the first sections of this measure that kind of speaks about no person shall cultivate in an area. And then if we go, which by the way, everything on this page is clickable, from the Hawaii Revised Statute to the measure details for your information. And then if we go to the next slide, it is another section again of 514B of the homeowner of the Hawaii State Revised Statutes. That's again, this measure is trying to kind of weed out and target owners being able to make the decisions for us when it comes to cultivation. So a little bit of open discussion would probably be helpful in this group in the future if it's something you guys want to look at closer. Okay, next slide, please. This next one is Senate Bill 2, Senate Draft 1 relating to trees. And this one again was introduced in 2025, and it had this, it stopped moving after Valentine's Day last year, and it only was heard by government operations of the Senate committees. So in order for this bill to remain alive, it does need to be heard and passed by this joint committee of Ways and Means and Judiciary by the decking deadline this year of 3/6/2026. And so for this bill, what was really interesting is that it's a pilot project to plant fruit-bearing trees on new and newly renovated state landscaping projects for public harvest. Also in the measure, it stated that you didn't need a permit to harvest. It's not required. And then lastly, one of the things that I mentioned was that the state is not liable for any injuries or illnesses. Now, if we go to the next slide. When this is like kind of a screenshot of all of the rules that this measure is kind of stating to have but specifically on this next slide, please. We take a look closely within the highlighted. It's the government operations of the Senate committee put in this very specific language in the Senate draft, which states that districts outlined in section 4-1, 4D, and E of the Hawaii Revised Statutes can operate this pilot project. And when I researched a little bit more about these Hawaii Revised Statutes, and if you click on this underlined word when you get access to this, it specifically has the districts that this measure is pertaining to, and that it's allowable for this pilot project. So you can research that further. This link here will take you to a GIS mapping website where you can see who the legislature of the 2025 of these districts were and which representatives would oversee this project if it passes with this specific language in it. Next slide, please. Again, kind of highlighting further on this research in terms of the committee report, the government operations of the Senate committee also did something in terms of adding a baseline cost associations for projects that will serve as the basis for any pilot projects for tree planting. And this is the highlighted of the $90,502 to keep up for maintenance, and then the $310,000 to keep up with any of those annual costs. So again, if this measure does get passed, this is the baseline at which the legislature will be measuring your report against. And then lastly, with the testimony. So I felt like this was really important to add because you get to see which organizations were already in support of it and organizations who are already doing something about this, even without the measure. So we have the Kalunani Gardens, the Community Forest DOFA program. If you click on this blue link, it will take you over to their website where you can actually see what kind of implementation maintenance processes as well as continuity processes that they're putting in if this project was something you folks wanted to take up as well. So I think that was really helpful in terms of a resource. Okay. That was 2025. Now we are going to talk about 2026. So now this is the bills that have been introduced in 2026. and this is going to be their process. So next slide, please. Starting first with the substance gardening, this is House Bill 2572. It also has a companion with it on the Senate side, but this bill is moving progressively and on time. We have that the Agricultural Committee did refer to it to its final committee with Finance. And so as long as Finance hears and passes this measure by 3/6, then it's still going to remain alive. And this one is establishing a temporary subsistence plus gardening pilot program to be housed under Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity. It's going to require a legislative report, and it's asking for funds to do all of this. If you go to this next slide, please. And then this is the companion, the Senate Bill 2704, Senate Draft 1, which had the same exact instances passed by Agriculture and is now heading over to Ways and Means. Taking a closer look at this, next slide, please. Taking a closer look at this is just a brief overview of the measure details. Precisely the same for each measure. And I did provide for you folks a supplemental resource from Uncle Daniel Bishop, who is the author of this bill, who is looking to, this supplemental resource will provide more information on why he wants to have this, how it's already been benefiting his community, and in what ways that it's going to continue to propel us into a really, really cool and bright future. So yeah, thank you. Next slide. This one, House Bill 2374, House Draft 1, unfortunately has died already. But what was really cool about this one is that this is the unique part of the legislative session calendar. So for this one, it has 3 committees, EDN, WAL, and FIN. And because it didn't make it to the first lateral deadline to hear from both EDN and WOW by last week Friday, it's now essentially dead. But this was a really awesome collaborative kind of bill because it's based off of a House concurrent resolution, which is also really unique, a House concurrent resolution 68 in 2021, where DOE and DLNR DOFA had to collaborate and establish a shade and fruit tree program with the purpose of it being able to be supportive and encouragement in promoting these educational activities for planting and propagation of native shade trees and fruit trees on public school campuses. If we go to this next slide here, the purpose of this act portion, the measure details, if you folks were to pull it up later, the House concurrent resolution and its brief findings are actually included in the measure details. So a report was technically done, but it was actually included as part of the measure, which I think is a really great way to have this basis foundation of where you're going, where you are now, and how are we going to achieve our goals. So it was a really great conversation in terms of the measure details and a really good layout. And then this next page here, which I think I still included it, is the testimony. So the Shade and Fruit Tree program has had the same relevant language as well as description language for the past several years, the exact same. And it's always been this collaboration between Department of Ed and DLNR DOFA. And so the testimony this year from Department of Ed was just remaining this keeping this voluntary opportunity for such a program for people to participate in, and then also targeting conversations about how to alleviate the maintenance responsibilities and in what way does your maintenance plan include others and community too. And so Heather McMillan of DLNR in the testimony video, she does address this with the chair and vice chair, and she states that yes, the participation in the program should be voluntary. And then also it kind of expands this conversation of this maintenance where the custodial staff will maintain, but that burden is not only on custodial, it's also going to fall onto teachers and students and tree care and just understanding where that baseline of that maintenance is based off of the height of the tree. So I found that to be a very important aspect when thinking about planting and being part of these public areas is just the momentum and the maintenance being the key concepts that we're keeping in mind. Okay.
Thanks, Kamalani, for the detailed layers. I think it really shows to everyone how many layers there are in a bill and the description. You need to check more than just the description, look at the bill content and all of the testimony and communication. So thank you so much. And I'll just introduce myself for everyone really quick. My name's Anna Ezzi. I'm an economic development specialist focusing on agriculture and food systems in the Department of Research and Development for the County of Hawaii. I'm based in Hilo, and my role, a big part of it is helping connect the community and folks to engage in policy. So this is a really awesome opportunity for me to share. But I will just preface that I'm not the expert on the bills that I'm going to be talking about. I'm just kind of uplifting them because they're relevant to this group. But I have links to connect with more of the lead advocates. So you can get the full picture. As we know, there's a lot of layers. But yeah, I'll jump right into, so I'm basically going to be talking about three very similar bills, and these are really important for biocultural restoration futures, and they're specifically creating a new community co-management agreement pathway with the DLNR. And I will dig in. I'm sure there might be people in this group with more expertise. So yeah, I'll be excited to get into discussion. But the first version that I'll focus on right now is this House Bill 2218, which is moving really well. It's actually getting through it's scheduled today for a hearing in the Finance Committee at 2 p.m. So our slides have a link to the YouTube for the hearing if you want to watch that later. And if you can go to the next slide. So just some kind of background on this bill. So the lead advocate is Kua'aina Ulu Awamo. And I thought this snippet from their testimony really shows the intersection with Hui Māla, just looking at how protecting our environment, the foundation of our very existence, is about sustained and long-term commitments towards achieving Aina Momona abundance once again, and really uplifts the existing work that so many communities are doing to steward Aina, steward the ocean, and produce food. So we also have a link to their website. It's like a master class in how to organize an advocacy website with background on this bill. But basically, they've explained that it comes out of a situation on Kauai with Ha'ena, where the Hui Maka'ainana o Makana was going through a process of establishing some sort of community agreement, and their options were very limited with the DLNR, basically, from how I understand it. So Kua and the Hui worked together with DLNR in the interim to do some outreach in the community and develop this bill, essentially, to create this new pathway. Can click the next slide. And it's changing as it's moving through the committees. So this is just looks very technical, but just to summarize, basically the Committee on Water and Land, which first heard this House bill, did amend it to add a kind of review process every 5 years between DLNR and the community co-managing community. And then also there was a question raised about the process for if there were two or more organizations hoping to manage the same area. And I was able to see, since the testimony for today's hearing is already posted, we could see Kua's response. And they basically address these points, saying that there already is a process in the law for which actually they want to encourage cross-community collaboration with one or more entities co-managing spaces, and that there's existing processes to determine which communities will be in that agreement. And then they also just added that that 5-year review, it can put a burden onto that community organization to do that review. So they suggested an amendment to have DLNR coordinate 5-year reviews. I know those are very detailed things, but yeah, and just to show, so this is another version. There's basically 3 versions of very similar bill. This is a Senate bill, which has gotten through its first committee, and it still has one more to be scheduled. So it's not out of the woods yet, but basically the same bill. You can go to the next slide. And then this is the Senate companion of that first House bill I showed you, which I just put it last because it's hasn't even gotten through its first hearing. So we'll see if it makes it. Yeah. Keep going. Thank you. So just to kind of tie together this group and some of these bills that we're talking about. So yeah, we're trying to encourage you folks as individuals on behalf of your organizations to testify and share your opinions. And then as a Hui, as a collective, I feel like these bills can help us inform our strategic planning and kind of as we determine a process for what we'll advocate for and how this can kind of give us an idea of what is out there. And Leah has done such a great job of showing that there is a lot of very relevant bills to this group and what we're working for. And then lastly, just seeing that there are really strong advocate networks around these issues. And so, just thinking about how we can connect with other networks like KUA to support these policies with our common goals. And then lastly, this is an awesome resource that I can actually put the link in the chat if anyone wants to check it out. Leah had this created with Hawaii Food Plus policy with Janine from Food Plus. Me and Leah are both graduates of Food Plus policy, the same cohort. So that's how we know each other. But this snapshot just shows some of these key bills and also really helps break down just from the advocacy viewpoint, just how to navigate those committee referrals. You can contact the chairs of these committees to ask for hearings. I think this was made a little while ago, so they're not the most up-to-date information in this resource. Kamalani, I think that's true. I don't know when this was made, but yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here to support.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, that one was made a little bit while ago, but just because the legislative session is so dynamic, and so but the information on there is still very, very key in terms of exactly how processes move. It also has sections on there about contact information for which legislators would be in charge of certain bills. So still relevance in terms of the information, maybe not so much in the call of action, but works either way. Next slide. Then just some last points here is that we did highlight some policy trackers. There are numerous of them. Some of us have our own. I have my own, Anna, Izzy has her own. So, but these are just the 3 that I feel like are really helpful in terms of regardless of where you are in the legislative process. Hawaii's Farmers Union United, what's unique about them is that they just put their own calendar on their website. So you can actually pull up their relevant bills and look at the calendar that's on their website to see when hearings are scheduled. Hunter also has included his own testimony on there, so you can look to see the stance. And what's even more cool about it too is that when you pull up different measures using that website, you can actually see why it's important for small farmers to have something like this included and passed as an act. So I think it really ties in that community aspect. The Food Plus policy, they're using this new system. What I really like about this middle one with the Food Plus policy is that they actually include different headers in terms of where a bill is in the legislative process based off of the legislative calendar. So if you're like new to the process, but you want to know how a bill is transitioning and you're still trying to gain some foundation for yourself, that's a really good one to use. And then the Hawaii Food System Transforming Together legislative policy tracking is really awesome as well because it actually has a search box. So you can actually use it to search up different aspects of bills. So I typed in gardens once and it pulls up not just state ledge, but it also does counties across the Pai'aina. So I feel like that's really important too because we want to have these mergence occurring at all times of the state ledge. Um, yes, next slide, please. And then that is it. Mahalo nui loa for letting us talk. I hope you folks find some time to drink water and eat something good today. Thank you so much. Amira.
That was amazing. Thank you both. I will definitely include these slides in a follow-up email along with a recording of this presentation. And so you can go and explore all those clickable links. Yeah, that was great. I really appreciate the visual of seeing where these are in the process and just, how lengthy these processes can be and all the different points at which we can participate and advocate for what we believe in. We have a lot of time for questions. What did I say? Because I also wanted to leave time at the end for member updates, but we can spend, um, another 10, 20 minutes on questions and answers, and then the last third of the convening can be other updates. But of course, there's flexibility in there.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, thanks so much for demystifying the legislative process. Um, I worked in the ledge many years ago and also in Congress. So I have a really good sense of the legislation, and it's purposely kept to be really opaque and mysterious for the average person, but it really isn't when you start unwinding everything that you've done. So I appreciate that, and I would encourage everyone here, if you're not already registered, register on the website, and it's a great way to track things. I have my own bill tracker and so forth, and it's a way to provide testimony and just jump in. It's not scary at all. I was curious, the HB 1468, which from last session, the right to garden one, because it looks like it's dead again because it's not being picked up. But you asked for any input. Uh, my experience is private property rights or something the legislature really, really like guards, and this is like an affront to associations and condo, those planned communities. But the thing to look at was probably a half dozen years ago, it might have been more like 10. The legislature actually passed something so that you can put a U.S. and Hawaiian flag in planned communities. You can fly a flag. And I really like how the preamble of this bill harkens back to the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution and the Hawaii State Constitution, your right to garden. So if people are serious about pushing this, I would suggest going back and researching, well, how did the flag one get passed over opposition by the private property owners? Um, because that's what is going to be the rub on this right to garden. It's not it's a good idea, a bad idea. It's going to be, well, you legislature can't tell us private people what to do. But the legislature actually did do that with the right to fly a flag, even if you're, live in Hawaii Kai or Mililani, there's an AOAO, and it says you can't fly a flag. The legislature blew that up and said, yes, you can. So same thing for right to garden. If the legislature, there's precedents to blow up these private agreements. So that would be my suggestion there. But nothing really realistically can be done this session on something like that. And it takes a lot of groundwork for sure. So that is my input.
Mahalo for that. Thank you.
Oh, one other thing I'm going to note is the power of staff. It's really great to meet with the committee chairs who are very powerful, but and certainly people should do that. But get close to the staff because the staff does the work, and that's a good way to get you know information, but also, they're kind of whispering in their boss's ear, like, oh, this group is really a good group. We should hear their bill, or, whatever. Don't underestimate the power of the legislative staff to influence things. Yeah, that would be a tip.
Got my gears turning when you talked about the flag issue and like what can and can't be allowed in HOAs. And I think it's just another interesting point that I don't know the percentage, but it seems like more and more people are living in these privatized housing developments. And if that's the direction of housing, then we need to be addressing all of these kind of new, in a way, like restrictions that HOAs are implementing. Um, and so it feels like there's got to be, yeah, I like hearing that there's sort of this precedent and that it's a natural next step to be exploring further what HOAs can and cannot prohibit. It's also interesting legally, it's about what they can and can't prohibit, not what they can and can't force. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like omission of.
And actually, you just got me more excited too, because solar water heater and PV had the similar issues, and I can't recall whether I think the legislature kind of preempted because what these ALAOs care about is uniform look, and that's why they prohibit flags. That's why they prohibit gardens. That's why they prohibit stuff on your roof. Well, that stuff on your roof helps like reduce your costs of heating and electricity and other things. So, and of course, growing food, so I seem to recall there was something there. But Anna, you're right. And the scary part too is that the trend is not just privatized, but maybe less so in Hawaii, but certainly on the continent, is gated communities, private security, things like that. Like we're not even going to bother with the government. We're just going to create our own compounds, and that's a societal direction that's kind of concerning.
Mahalo for that. I did have like a question too, though. I don't know who else worked for PAR, but I know Jason Sean did. So, Jason, how was the elaboration of the PAR involvement in terms of how to assist the public when it comes to stuff like this?
Putting me on the spot. That was a while. Um, I mean, like how to get the public involved or in kind of these. Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably he said it all, I think, or I think that it takes a lot of time and collaboration and organization to get something through. I'm not an expert on like creating a movement. Only on I'm not even an expert on the process, but I think yeah, I think you covered the process well, and I think like a lot of these bills, a lot of people are in, like I'm looking at the testimony for this HB 2218. There's so many people who testified in support, not just the departments or agencies, but like dozens and dozens of individuals. Clearly, there's organization behind them, um, and like that's something that legislators can't ignore. So yeah, nothing more to say other than yeah.
Hi, Anya. Thanks, Jason. Hi, Anya.
Hi, yeah, I had a question, just kind of about, I know I get emails from various organizations about, oh, it's, time to testify, go online, and testify for this bill with different, interests, just from all kind of different. So I'm wondering about recommendations, for websites or email newsletters so I can stay informed, specifically about these ones related to food gardening. And someone shared the transformingHawaiiFoodSystem.org in the chat, and I signed up for their monthly email newsletter. I think Hawaiian Farmers Union United also, someone said that they will post the bills that are coming up online, but is there's any other ones? Thank you.
And Izzy, you have any resources while I pull up some too?
Yeah, I think those are good ones. I Hawaii Food Plus Policy is a great one to follow, like on Instagram or email newsletter. The Hawaii Hunger Action Network also sends emails if you sign up with them. Those kind of go more into also like SNAP and other forms of food access. I'm looking to see if KUA has a mailing sign up, and I'm sure there is. What you got, Kamalani?
I am a big proponent of the Capitol website. I think that that's just such a good one to already have a login for. So then that way, when I do get notifications from these grassroots organizations, I'm already prepared to just log in and do my testimony. And I'm not being delayed by that. What's been interesting about it, especially like last year when I was tracking bills, the Capitol website didn't provide me with the relating to aspect. So I would just get a list of bills. But this year, using the email notification, it actually can tell me what is the bill relating to. So that kind of helps especially when it gets to closer to the end of the legislative session, or even at the very beginning of the legislative session when they're just scheduling everything all at once, I can actually now can see. Another thing is that what I like about the Capitol website, at least I'm saying for the Senate, not yet for the House, is that whenever I get those Capitol website notifications saying that my bill is scheduled for a hearing, it will give me the agenda along with the Zoom link for me to watch, or not the Zoom link, the YouTube link for me to watch the YouTube live. But what's been really helpful for, again, the Senate, but I haven't seen for the House, is that they actually include timestamps now on top of their YouTube. So it's really nice that I can just click on the timestamp to find my bill. So yeah, I just use the Capitol. That's just my go-to because it's just quicker for me to get info that way.
Thank you. So there's something where you can get the emails directly from the Capitol. Okay, I just haven't been signed. I have a login, but I don't get any, they send you like what's coming up or whatever.
Yeah, let me log into my Convening. I think I can share screen.
Just made you co-host.
Thank you. So I'm logged in and I use the hearing notifications. And so you can actually search by measure, specific measures. You can add it to your hearing notification list, or you can actually search by your committees that you want to get hearing notifications for. So it's really helpful for me in that way.
We'll just put a PDF of basically what you just showed from PAR. It's written down.
Thank you.
No problem. I also added Hawaii Airlines for progressive action. They also send out alerts.
Achi, I noticed you went off on camera, yeah, and off mute.
Yeah, I was wondering how, if any, like obstacles, how Oahu centric would you consider some of these bills as far as their success or lack of interest? Um, that often has some bearing on some of this stuff going forward.
That's such a good question. I don't know. I hate to say it, but I'm being mentored right now by Hunter Hevelin of the Hawaii Farmers Union. And so he's the one that's really on the ground working at all this stuff. So I guess director of advocacy kind of question. I wish I knew a little bit more about that, Ati. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, maybe Anna might have some perspective being from another county, because we're also different. And that's one thing that keeps coming up with Hui Māla is and the statewide um, aspirations is just that voice and how does it all fit in to the bigger scheme.
Yeah, I think it's really calling back to what Kamalani was showing with one bill that specifically just outlined the tree planting for one district on Oahu. And that was like a detail that I have been seeing that bill and had no idea about that location specific. But besides that, I think like the community co-management bills seem to be really developed based off of the Kauai community connections and experience. So that is an interesting example of neighbor island leadership. Um, but yeah, it's a great thing to continue looking out for.
And I would just jump in, Ati, on and I didn't know the bill till today's call, the back to the right to garden bill. I look at who introduced it, and there were legislators I'm not familiar with. I'm very Oahu centric, so I'm guessing it's the group because their preamble really anchored into the Lahaina wildfire, which is a really a good strategy. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's a good, like this crisis, this is our learning. And then if you can get the island together, then you got kind of a block of votes and the introducers become really strategic and key. Um, so it yeah, like who's carrying the water is almost as important as what's in the bill. And yeah, there's lots of good strategies there, but as a Oahu born and raised person, I can just say we are so Honolulu centric on this island. It's really unfair to the other counties, but I think that's kind of the reality. And until the pandemic and Zoom came along for testimony and so forth, oh my God, you're talking a whole day and a big cost to get to the Capitol and to actually get involved. Now that's a little less, but it still pays to be there in person if you're advocating, for sure. Um, but it's expensive to get there in person in terms of your time and that actual costs to get there. But Neighbor Islands, or I would say anytime you can get a coalition, that's the key. You know, do not try this by yourself.
Mahalo. Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. We had that kind of question kind of brought up um at a Hawaii Farmers Union meeting that we had last week Thursday, where other farmers were curious about how it would impact their county. Um, but again, like what Anna was saying and what Dan was sharing, just the looking at who introduced it, but also looking at the specifics. Um, because there was like this one bill that we were talking about that talked about agricultural workforce housing, but it had a specific language of a population of like 500,000 or something like that. And in that specific language, it actually was linked to Hawaii County and how they write their outlines for stuff. So this is a really good question. If you feel like you want to get more, and this is open to everyone too, Hunter does put on these legislative what updates as well, where you can actually enter into that space and ask questions about specific bills and what his insight has been since he's in that building every day working on these issues. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, just to build off of that, it's because the Hawaii Constitution has a provision that the legislature can only make general law. So if you see in the bill something like applies for counties over 500,000 population, they're making a general law, but it only applies to city and county of Honolulu. And that's how they kind of get around the constitutionality. And so even like the GET excise tax, the extra 0.5% was written that way initially. And then the neighbor island counties were like, "Hey, we want some of that too." And then they changed it. And sometimes you see the reverse only applies for counties of population under 500,000 or whatever. And then that's designed for other counties. And sometimes it's even as small as 100,000. They're trying to like target a particular county. So they can't just say applies to they can't be so overt about it, but it's just a legislative trick, if you will. And I think they would hate it being called a trick, but that's what it is. Or workaround.
So can I just ask the group, was anyone involved with those right to garden bills or that development? No. Okay. I thought this might be the group to
Mm.
ask.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it until it came across my email. It got me thinking, like, going forward, I wonder if an interesting advocate could be um, an HOA that has been very excited about uplifting gardens. And D.R. Horton, the developer of Ho'opili Community Association and that housing development, has been very active, and because it was formerly agricultural land, and there was a lot of pushback about that development there. I think as a result, the activism really got this community and developer and all the people involved to make growing food possible for the residents. And so I don't know if they'd be interested in getting involved, but just an idea that could be a compelling testimony. And especially if, they're seeing how it's actually affecting their residents and giving them access to fresh food. I don't know if that's actually the case. It could backfire because I happen to know that some of those residents haven't taken advantage of the fact that there are garden beds, like the ones that have yards, because there's also multi-unit housing and apartments. But the ones that have yards, they haven't all been fully utilized. I don't know if when utilized, it's created other issues, but if it didn't, that could be a really powerful story, right? Um, if anyone is pushing that and wanted to connect with them, I have a contact. And Kamalani, along those lines, I know you said earlier that it could be helpful to have a talk story session around Right to Garden specifically. Um, or I mean, we have time now, but
Oh, no, yeah. I feel like we did it.
okay, gotcha. Those are the questions. Yeah. Anything else about this presentation? We have about 20 minutes left from the allotted time, and I wanted to leave space for membership updates. But before I open the floor again, I did want to share um, that our next convening will be an office hour. We've decided, the leadership team thought this year we would explore doing this every other month, office hour office hour presentation, partly because we found, and Dan was involved in this, that when you have an office hour, like a lot of really good conversation can emerge, especially from those, who might not get a hold of me ahead of time, be like, can I present this thing? So we want to make a lot of room for that. It also lightens a little bit of the burden of planning, which has been a lot for me this year. It's going to be a busy year because of other things that are exciting and related to the Hui. And I'll just mention that I applied for climate resiliency funds to fund a new community garden at a Sing Community Park in Eva, and the funds were approved by the mayor and the managing director, which is very exciting. It still needs to be approved by city council through the regular budget cycle. So I'll find out finally in July or the end of June whether or not it's official, but I can already get the ball rolling, and that's really exciting. Um, and and then finally, before opening the floor, in March, so last couple weekends ago, we were trying to have this work day where I really hope, an opportunity for those who are, on island or are traveling at that time to be together in person at a garden or a food forest in this case. And so we were going to go to Kekulanui o Waimanalo to do some weeding and build a greenhouse, but the weather was so bad that we had to cancel. They have this regularly, so they're hosting this regardless. But I thought I would advocate for us to, if for those who are able and available, to go on Sunday, March 8th. So I'll be there. my parents will be there because they're visiting, and it's going to be a family affair. Oops. So I will send out that flyer also after this call. March 8th, 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And they start promptly at 8. All right. And so Dan, technically I can't ask for testimony. I can't lobby. I
No,
don't
but
even think indirectly.
this is part of the reason why my organization was created. We can ask for the money.
Yes.
We can provide testimony and it says support this aspect of the bill. Um, so yeah, you can't testify, but we can testify.
I can't,
That
yeah. And as far as I know, I don't even think I can ask people to testify, but
Well,
maybe
I
I'm wrong
think,
about that.
well, okay. Well, you haven't asked. I am suggesting to this group that when the mayor puts out the budget, so the city council is a little different than the ledge, but it's kind of the same basic rules. But they only have the one branch of 9 members. But the legislature will get the council will get the budget bill from the mayor's office, and it will have Anna's money somewhere in there. And the bill tends to be, hundreds of pages long. But when it comes, I promise I will just reply to this group and I will organize it for you. And you just stay silent. That is a very wise move on your part.
There may
But
be opportunity to also engage with the city council because those meetings are also, they're
Right,
about
right.
budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So same thing.
Yeah.
But also strategically, if you're not expecting any opposition, if the city council likes it, the administration, sometimes it's best just to be quiet because, then it just moves forward,
Yeah.
but
I'm not
it's
worried about it.
yeah.
It's money
Yeah,
that
I,
we
I think it's
have. Yeah.
unlikely to get any controversy, or the city council members, which is their right. They could, exit out of the budget, they could reduce it, they could do all kinds of things, but I think those are unlikely scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think if I were to advise anyone in any direction, I'd say focus the attention on the other things,
yeah,
like what's happening at the state legislature and the city charter at city and county. So those are things that do really need vocal support. Whereas what I'm working on, I'm not too worried about. But
yeah.
of course, welcome to show up to budget hearings. They're all online on the schedule. Other member updates? Questions, comments, concerns? Anything you're working on that you think would be interesting for us to know?
Yeah, I can share an update from Hawaii County. So we're working on our agriculture and food system plan. We're in this kind of draft stages and building out actions. And we're trying to uplift actions like that folks are already working on or planning to work on. And it's a 5-year plan, so in the next 5 years. So if there are like projects or programs that you're interested in, like maybe expanding to Hawaii Island, or building out awareness of resources, even statewide resources. I'd love to include those and kind of put them in one organized place, and then we're trying to use that as a tool to advocate for funding and support from our county eventually. So yeah, just a call it. I'd love to share actually in the office hour next month about this more, but just to kind of flag this for you all.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that whatever date we choose, it's usually the middle of the week and it's usually a Monday or a Friday, or sorry, middle of the month, and it's usually a Monday. Just said the two contradictory things. Usually middle of the month, the Monday or Friday. So make sure that you're available for that so you can share.
Thanks, Anna.
My project is not so big, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm a student of University of Hawaii West Oahu Sustainable Community Food Systems Program, and I'm working with my kumus there to kind of grow more food on campus in areas where irrigation and maintenance of those areas are already being performed. They're just having these water lines run and just weeds are growing. So instead, we're looking to just plant trees there, food and trees. And then at the same time, University of Hawaii West Oahu, we have two living laboratories on campus. We have the New Now, which is a Ulunio Grove in the back of our school. And then we also have a student organic garden that's under the Sustainable Community Food Systems program. But as I'm working on this project with my kumus, we're also looking into institutionalizing living laboratories on our campus. So we're planning on using the student voices and support of the faculty, as well as the experiences that people are having with planting food and being engaged in campus to create this maintenance plan for our program to oversee our living laboratories and institute into our policy that we need to have these kind of spaces preserved. So just working with my professors to make sure that these kind of aspects of our community is still maintained. I live on Oahu. My campus is on the west side, and so there's no community gardens in that area. So the closest thing that we get is from people growing food in their yards or having food in public spaces and at our school. So we're trying to make sure that these places and the people who work in these spaces can still remain because it's definitely a need on that side. Um, we on my school side, over 80 to 90% of the population is Native Hawaiian. And so we need to make sure that we're providing fresh and access food to people to gather, to have community, and also have access to fresh food when they need to. So working on a lot of stuff with my school to make sure that we can at least preserve it as much as possible.
I feel like I should be in touch with you more about the new community garden proposal in Eva.
Oh yeah. And also,
Um,
oh sorry, one last thing.
yeah,
I'm also not doing this alone. So I have a hui of people doing it with me, um, who are just expressed interest of wanting to get involved. Other organizations on the west side who want to get involved. So it's not just me that's spearheading this, which is a really important factor to kind of push. I couldn't have done it alone, even if I wanted to. It's just so many moving parts. So really grateful for that too.
I would love to connect with you and the hui of people that you are working with in this regard about getting people engaged in growing their own food and whether it's at home or in a community space on campus or in live um, living, what are you calling them? Living
They're
seed
called, they're called living laboratories
laboratories.
in definition on campus. So that's what I'm calling
Living laboratories. So I think there's overlap because I'm trying to be thorough in the community engagement around this new community garden idea. And I mean, while we are kind of limited in how much influence, like how much we can change and shape the design of the garden, but now that I know I have money for it, we will be starting that kind of process of engagement. And I mean, once I can procure, so that's a whole other thing. But that's another year maybe of work of paperwork. But in any case, I'm mental note and written note about connecting with you on that and seeing if there's folks that you work with who would want to be engaged in that and be able to influence a little bit of the design and layout of that. Anything else? Well, if not, then we can all go for lunch 10 minutes early. And we can, uh, I'll follow up with an email with the slides, the resources, the recording link, and also some other relevant updates or relevant news. And I wanted to, oh shoot, I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, that is meant that play. I email that out, and I don't usually BCC sometimes, but usually it's just to all, and that's meant to be a space or a resource if anyone wants to reply to that email with, you know, questions or important updates. It's meant to be a listserv that people can access and use. Of course, if it gets to a point where it's like being abused for some reason, because that can happen, then maybe we'll shift. But right now, it's not being utilized enough, in my opinion. Um, I think Kima a couple weeks ago was able to get some notice out about submitting testimony for the new recognizing you as a like a staple or something like that. I can't remember exactly the language, but you know, and I was like, yes, please use that. So just a reminder, that is a resource. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody so much for being here. Thank you, Kamalani and Anna, for your really good presentation and everyone's questions and elaborations on that. It was really great.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Mahalo.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Aloha.